from Aston University. We were just saying earlier that normally we'd be visiting Aston University and lots of other universities for career fairs and sessions like this. But unfortunately, the situation means we have to do this remotely. But we've been running webinars throughout lockdown. This is our 21st webinar, I think. And we're actually able to reach way more students and graduates. It's also being recorded, so you can look back at the presentation and share it with your friends. So I've been invited to discuss the topic of finding a job in a recession. Probably takes about 20 to 30 minutes. There will be the opportunity to ask any questions, as Hilary said, in the comments box, and I'll be delighted to answer those at the end. So let's kick off. First of all, my name's Dan Hawes. I'm the co-founder of a company called GRB. GRB stands for Graduate Recruitment Bureau. We're the go-to platform for high-caliber university students, graduates, and recruiters. I was established back in 1997 by myself and another graduate, and we've slowly grown to have about 40 staff and over 1,800 clients across all sectors across the entire UK. So we work with companies you will have heard of like Post Office, IBM, Unilever, Ocado, some big name recruiters who come to us to find excellent graduates. But we also deal with several fast growing SMEs, so small to medium enterprises that aren't quite in the Premier League yet. They may not be so well known, but they need graduate talent and they really struggle to get noticed. So we work with lots and lots of fast growing SMEs and startups. I guess this is the hidden jobs market. So along with the big name recruiters, we have a huge range of clients who are using us. So our team of recruitment experts have managed to successfully place over 8,000 graduates with these companies, and all of them are into full-time graduate level jobs. So we don't deal with part-time or temporary work. These are all career positions on a permanent basis all over the UK. It's entirely free, by the way. Recruiters pay us to find you. So I will give you details at the end about how you can register. So let's start with some of the headlines we've noticed over the last few months. So there's been lots of disruption, as we know. If we take university life, it's very, very different, with students having to study remotely, use online lectures, and maybe some in-person seminars, that kind of thing. So that's changed hugely. Also, the prospects for graduates about to leave university is very challenging. So some of the headlines here from the FT, you can see what are the job prospects for the class of 2020. The young and low skilled are hit the hardest. Coronavirus damps the hopes for future. A Guardian article that was today. What does the future hold for graduate recruitment? Something else from the Guardian about employers slashing graduate jobs, but students mustn't lose. And also something in the bottom right hand corner that we've just heard about is that the furlough scheme is being extended to the end of March, which is actually good news for recruiters because it means they've got a lifeline to pay their staff right until the end of March. So that's actually just been announced in the last hour or so. So some mixed headlines there. The situation we're in, the facts of the matter are we are in a pandemic. This has killed over 1 million people. It breaks on social mobility and economic growth. Since lockdown in March, in this country, 750,000 jobs have gone. People have been made redundant. Now, the concern was when the furlough was originally going to end at the end of October, that would have pushed it up to over 1 million, which would have been catastrophic. But as we've just heard, the government are expecting till the end of March. So we could be delaying that, but at the very least, it's given a lifeline and some sort of certainty for recruiters. In terms of graduates entering the job market, approximately 500,000 are now looking for work. They also have huge amounts of financial debts, on average about £50,000 of debt. So the pressure is on for graduates to find their first career position and start paying off their loan. More importantly, start their career with a kind of company that can use their skill set and can use their degree. Now, the pandemic has meant we're now in a global recession. Quarter two GDP fell by 19.8%, which is massive, sort of the worst dip in 75 years or something like that. So a huge shock to the global economy. Now, we're all trying to figure out when we're going to get back to what it was like in 2019. Some estimates vary from another 18 months or maybe even another 3 years. It's very hard to tell. So we can only go on the last recession, which was in 2009, and that lasted about 8 months. But we're in very different circumstances. The actual involvement of government providing a lot more financial injections is something different this time around, and that some sectors have been hit worse than others. So it's very, very different to the last recession, and it's very, very hard to predict just how long this is likely to last. So for recruiters, all this uncertainty means they're having to either defer start dates for their graduate intake or postponing recruitment. Now, the good news is no one has actually said we are going to stop recruiting grads. That did happen in the last recession in 2009. So whilst it is quite frustrating if you are graduating, the fact of the matter is that when we have this back, there's going to be lots of recruiters who are going to give the green light to their recruitment, and there will be so many vacancies. You just don't know when. Certain companies, certainly smaller to medium enterprises, taking on graduates and training them isn't the top priority. Survival is more likely a more pressing concern, and their cash flow. So for certain SMEs, this is going to be extremely hard. So the graduate labour market has suffered significant damage, but not across every single sector. Some sectors have really been hit badly. So the arts sector, we all know, cinemas, theatres, that whole sector where they're relying on huge numbers of people coming through the door has been hit really, really badly in this country. Also, certain sectors in retail, hospitality, leisure, tourism, aviation, these are going to take a long time to come back. In the last recession, graduates decided to become more risk averse. So they tended to start their careers in safer sectors, shall we say, that offered more financial security. So we're already seeing a huge drive of graduates wanting to go into teaching, for instance, but also other jobs within the public sector, because that seems more robust, can offer more financial and potentially more job security. So we do notice in sessions previously that graduates' behaviour does change in terms of the kind of companies that they apply for. Some degrees may not have prepared graduates for the jobs that are now available in the new economy. So that's really hard for a lot of graduates who've done a particular degree and they found that the jobs have dried up. The good news is they will have transferable skills. Bad news is they may just have to put on hold applying for certain sectors that they were very, very focused on until maybe a few years down the line. Finally, the number of 18 to 24-year-olds claiming universal credit rose from 235,000 in March this year, 529,400 in September. So that's not an ideal scenario for anyone, especially graduates who put 3 or 4 years into studying and will have paid to do that. So that's not a great figure, and hopefully this will improve as we slowly get out of this downturn. So there's some points there about the situation we're in, whether we like it or not. Those are the facts of the matter. Not great, but there are good news items out there if you look hard enough. So I'd like to share with you some positivity, some reassurance about a way through the recession. So we looked at other headlines before. These are the ones that are really encouraging. So first of all, we see hiring demand brings cheer for MBA graduates. Now, some of you may not be MBA graduates, but there's a trickle-down effect with this. And having a headline in the FT lets organisations know that there are values in hiring graduates with certain skill sets, fresh insights, and ultimately they are cheaper hires. So that's very encouraging to see. That was very, very recently in the FT. I think today this was actually on the BBC. The Bank of England are injecting an extra £150 billion into the economy, which is absolutely brilliant. This didn't happen in the last recession. The amount of investment the government are putting into the economy to get it through this is really, really good news. And again, companies see this, that gives them a little bit more confidence, a bit more certainty. They can move forward and maybe start hiring again. There's a few articles here from the FT, a mini housing boom, and also IKEA. So construction and retail, two sectors there that are actually forging ahead, and they're finding that they're really busy. They're going to need more people. So the picture is there are certain sectors that have been hit, but lots of other sectors that are doing particularly well, and they need graduates. Now, the final piece of this slide is the 10 fastest growing industries in the UK. This was done by IBIS World, a piece of research that showed certain sectors that are actually growing through the recession. So I would strongly suggest you go away and Google all of these sectors to find companies who may be hiring. So there's a few companies here that are in the financial services or technical sectors. They might be very niche, but they will be looking for graduates, and not everyone will be aware of this. So, I mean, the first one there, investment firms, 179.4% growth in revenue. That's massive. Life insurance, CRM system providers, go through this list. You will find employers who are looking for graduates. So there's a very small section of some of the positive headlines we've been reading in the last few months. In addition to this, there's lots of surveys and research that we get access to. We're members of the Institute of Student Employers. So this is a professional body of about 800 very large graduate recruiters. They often do surveys and polls of their members, so we always pay attention to what they say. We're also members of another professional association called the REC, which stands for the Recruitment Employers Confederation. They have thousands of members. Again, they do lots of research that we've been paying close attention to. And there's also some other snippets here I'd like to share with you, all of which will show you some positivity out there. So the level of vacancies across the board is running at just over 50% of normal rates, which isn't great, but it is climbing. It is climbing very slowly. Some sectors have not been affected as bad. So health, we all know companies are working around the clock to find a vaccine, but before the pandemic, they were working on lots of other projects. So all of a sudden, the healthcare and health sector in general are hiring huge numbers of people to get these projects over the line. Social care, obviously, IT, lots of IT consultancies out there have seen their growth accelerated by the recession and the pandemic, and also financial services. Companies and individuals are still investing, and that's a sector with lots of other niches within it that is still growing right now and need more people to hire. Now, many employers are at least discussing recruiting Q3 and Q4 this year. That's good. It's still on the agenda when conditions permit. So hopefully this will go higher up on the agenda for lots of graduate recruiters as we slowly build up confidence in the economy. A poll of business leaders by Management Today, they're a well-read management periodical. Also Hayes, the high street agency, found 55% are more likely to consider hiring an employee who was not within commuting distance to the office. Now, this whole remote working thing has gone in the favour of graduates, actually, because recruiters now think, well, we don't need someone to commute in if they're, if we're based in London and they need to be an hour or so away. They are now more receptive to people working beyond a certain radius. So if you're a graduate in Aston and you want to work in London, it might now mean you don't actually have to turn up to the office every single day. It may be once a week, it may be once a month. But this has actually opened up so many more opportunities for graduates. And you no longer need to be restricted by your geographical location. So this is really good news. And between the 18th and 25th of September, total online job adverts, so this is with the likes of Monster, Reed, Guardian, all those big job boards, they saw the number of adverts posted increase from 55 to 59%. It's only 4%, but it's going in the right direction. Not only that, but all categories were climbing. So that's very encouraging as well. Interestingly, last week I read that this year we could actually have a record number of new companies being registered with Companies House. Now, not all of them will go the distance, but many companies are started in recessions, companies like Uber, for instance. And this is very encouraging that people are starting to think, if they've been made redundant, for instance, that they're going to strike out on their own. So Companies House, where you need to register a new company, has noticed a record number of registrations. This is really, really encouraging. And finally, the British Chamber of Commerce, so they represent thousands of employers, they did a survey and 41% of firms expected their turnover to actually increase over the next 12 months. So, there are sectors out there that are moving forward, they're generating revenue, in doing so, they're growing, they will need graduates. So here's a small overview of some of the surveys and research that we hear about that you may not be aware of. I think should give graduates a lot of reassurance right now. Now, this is really important. This is the trends in graduate recruitment since 2000, okay? Now, this was published by the Institute of Student Employers. So what you can see here on the 2008-2009, that was the last recession. So graduate vacancies dropped by 25% in the last recession. Now, if you go right to the end, 2019, 2020, the drop in vacancies is only 12%. So it's not as bad as the last recession. The year isn't quite over yet, and we'll need to see what the predictions are for next year. But right now, when you look at those side to side, 2008, 2009, and 2019, 2020, it's not as bad as it looks. But we will see how recruiters feel with regard to their recruitment for 2021. Because if you look at 2009, 2010, it's still a reduction in graduate vacancies. I think that's about 7%. So, there will be another hit next year. To what extent, we don't know. So if we focus in on the graduate recruitment industry a little bit more, so the Institute of Student Employers did some research with AGCAS. So Aston University Careers Service will be members of AGCAS. This is the Association of Graduate Careers Advisory Services. They did some research in May this year, and it showed only 12% of members are saying they'll be recruiting less graduates in 2020, 15% in 2021. Now, the big news here is internships and apprenticeships and placements were badly hit. Quite a lot of graduate recruiters did actually stop hiring students for these opportunities, which is a real shame. But for graduate jobs, only 12% say they'll be recruiting less. So to me, if you flip that, that says that 78% of graduate recruiters will be recruiting the same, if not more, this year. So that's really, really good news, and not as bad as the last recession. So really important piece of information there. Now, why aren't graduate recruiters carrying on recruiting across the board? Well, 39% said uncertainty is the most common reason for their changes in hiring plans. So it's totally understandable that employers with uncertainty in the way the economy is going in their particular sector, are very reticent to invest in hiring people, and they may actually have to make redundancies. So uncertainty is still a big concern for a lot of recruiters and is stopping them moving forward and making these investment decisions. So as I mentioned before, 31% of employers are actually delaying the start dates for their new hire. That's not bad news. It just might mean graduates will be starting a little bit further down the line. As I said earlier, no one is stopping graduate recruitment. 31% here are delaying the start dates. I mentioned before, the reduction in hiring is a lot worse for SMEs. They're struggling with surviving in many cases, and if they're in certain sectors like retail, hospitality, leisure, tourism, aviation, it remains to be seen whether they'll actually be here in the next 6 months. So companies who are very small and cash flow is very tight, they may not make it through. I mentioned earlier that we'd normally be visiting universities at this time of year. We're not the only ones. 69% of recruiters have cancelled visits to universities. 72% have cancelled going along to career fairs, which is a real shame. We love seeing students face to face. It's a very good way for students and graduates to meet potential employers and speak to them at careers fairs. So hopefully this time next year we'll be back to normal. Not only that, but 71% of recruiters have moved their interviews online. Now, many firms were doing this before the pandemic and the recession hit anyway, but those that are on the fence or maybe didn't have the technology have now moved their recruitment process online, which is really good news, because we were concerned that if companies couldn't do that, they wouldn't be hiring at all, because if you can't interview people face to face, how are they going to do it? Well, technology's helped. It means that many graduate recruiters are doing interviews online. You may have had them yourself. But not only that, they're doing assessment centres virtually, and they're also onboarding and even training graduates remotely, which is brilliant. So it does mean that recruiters can carry on even if they can't see graduates face to face. That's really good news. Technology has saved the day there, most definitely. 92% of recruiters are actually home working right now. And I mentioned earlier how that's such a big deal because it now means there are opportunities for graduates to actually start their job working from home. It's not for everyone, but it does mean that employers are a little bit more receptive to that idea. So for graduates, having that work-life balance that we all want means that that's now a realistic expectation. So that's the way we're working in the future. Does mean that it's a huge advantage to graduates about to enter the jobs market. Now, about 40% of firms still haven't finalised their hiring plans. So that's quite a fair chunk, and they will have thousands of vacancies that are just on ice at the moment. When they get the green light, there's going to be a huge bounce back, certainly for some sectors. So we noticed quite a few mergers and acquisitions firms getting a lot more busier now. They had a lot of work backed up. They're now starting to get on with it, and they do need to recruit. So mergers and acquisitions is one sector we've noticed that is bouncing back, so maybe others will follow. So that gives you an overview of the kind of the graduate recruitment industry. So very, very specific to you guys. And also just to touch on how it isn't the same for every sector, okay? We talked about some sectors that are suffering. You can see here the same survey from the Institute of Student Employers. Built environment, energy, engineering and industry, they're not recruiting as much. Legal, about the same. Look at charity and the public sector. We talked about the public sector earlier. That's not just teaching, but that's working in the civil service, the medical profession, all sorts of parts of the public sector are actually recruiting more graduates, 14%. So when you actually look at the sectors, you will notice the ones that are actually growing and the ones that have been disrupted. So you need to pay close attention to that to increase your chances of finding work. So that's what I want to finish on now, is positive steps you can take with all that information I've given you to get the graduate job that you deserve. So first of all, don't lose sight of your career goals. Remind yourself why you started your degree 3 or 4 years ago. You may need to take a more zigzag route to get there. So it may take a few jobs before you actually land the dream job that you want. And that's not a bad thing, because you could be picking up experiences in other sectors. Employers really value that. So don't lose sight of your career goals, stay positive, and focus on that with every job application you're making. I've mentioned this before, just to reinforce it, obviously avoid depressed sectors. We've talked about aviation, tourism, leisure and hospitality. Focus on sectors that are seeing a surge in activity. Online retail, so e-commerce. One of our biggest clients is Amazon, but there are lots and lots of other e-commerce firms. Are they recruiting? Any in-home service, so we looked at Deliveroo or Uber Eats, things like that, or Ocado. They're all recruiting huge numbers, especially now we're in another lockdown. They may have another spike in activity. Healthcare, we've talked about. Fintech, another sector of the IT industry that's doing extremely well. Cybersecurity, with lots more people working from home, employers need to ensure that the systems within people's homes are secure. So cybersecurity is an increasing priority. Analytics or data science or forecasting, very important now to give certainty to employers. So they need NUMUC graduates to go through lots of data to figure out over the last 9 months where their sales going to come. So that's a worthwhile investment. And also lots of other technical consultancies. In the 23 years we've been in recruitment, we've seen various turns, not just the recession, 9/11, the dot-com bubble burst. Technical consultancies consistently recruit graduates. They just seem to ride through this, and they kind of find their growth is accelerated in certain conditions. So technical consultancies, and you don't need to be an IT graduate, you'll still need finance people, marketing people, operations, HR. So certainly look at technical firms for graduate jobs. Always build your CV with skills that employers will value. We say this to students and graduates all the time. When you're at university, you need to hoard as many skills as possible by volunteering, doing work with societies, or any part-time work that you do, all being mindful of how you can build your CV with skills. And I'm sure you've all done that, but keep adding to it as you go along. You will need to use your time productively. Of course, you need to take small steps to gather momentum. And we've seen lots of graduates come to us who want to practice virtual interviews, for instance. So I mentioned before, a lot of recruiters are now doing this. And interviews are daunting at the best of times, let alone doing it remotely, where technology can let you down, or a housemate can interrupt you, and all these kind of things. So you do need to practice sitting in front of a laptop, doing a virtual interview. You just do it with a friend in another room. But when it comes to the real thing, it will show that you are prepared, and it will make you confident. So use the time productively right now to practice things like that. When you're ready to enter the job market, getting noticed is really key, okay? So there's 500,000 graduates on the jobs market right now. You need to use every channel to the jobs market. So use recruitment agencies, not just specialist ones like GRB. There are ones that specialize in certain sectors you may want to look at. Use LinkedIn. Lots of recruiters advertise on there if you're not on there already. Job boards, so all the obvious ones like Monster and Reed. It's worth getting on there, signing up for job alerts. Obviously, your career service. Employers will still be looking to advertise with the career service. So there's lots of things you can do to reach employers. Now, one thing that we've seen work several times is sending speculative letters. So by this, I mean, if you find a company and they haven't got any jobs advertised, it doesn't mean that they're not recruiting. So many jobs don't get advertised. What happens sometimes is they may advertise it internally, ask their current members of staff to refer other people. And sometimes that doesn't work. They don't get round to actually advertising the job. So we always suggest sending out speculative job applications. So research the company. What do they do? What projects are they working on? Look at their departments. Go on LinkedIn. See who the decision makers are. Tailor a letter with a CV and you can get their attention very, very quickly. With a very strong skill set, they could be very interested in interviewing you, and straight away you've got no other competition from other graduates because you've had this particular approach. So it does take a bit of homework, but sending speculative letters to employers can work. When it does come to interviews, you will need to be prepared for the to answer the question, what did you do in lockdown? Okay, so recruiters want to see that you're resilient. You didn't lose momentum. You kept moving forward despite challenging conditions. You maybe did an online learning course. Harvard or Open University have lots of online learning courses. Start using them if you're not already. Were you able to volunteer? Did you help the local council during the pandemic, make food deliveries, things like that? Or were you lucky and you actually had some contract or part-time work? You need to demonstrate that you've been keeping the momentum going when lots of other people may have given up, got into a negative mindset, that kind of thing. So be prepared for that question. That will come up quite a few times. You know what? If all this is too much and you really don't want to enter the job market, you do have other options. If you've got contacts abroad, you can go abroad. I mean, we are placing graduates in China, Australia right now, who haven't been, well, Australia hasn't been as affected, but China were first in. They're coming out of this. Things are starting to get better there. If you're prepared to, you have contacts, you may have better opportunities with the kind of jobs you're looking for, maybe by going abroad. So you could consider that. You might want to start your own business. You know, that's not without risk. But if you had something going on the side while you're at university, maybe now is the time to start your own business. I mentioned the amount of companies being registered at Companies House, potentially being a record year. So that's a good sign. Maybe it's the time and the opportunity now to start your own business. What we do find in recessions is lots of graduates decide to stay at uni. That's absolutely fine. That's a good approach. As long as the postgraduate course you choose is going to put you in a stronger position in a year's time. Hopefully things will be better. Obviously it costs money. If you can afford to do that, postgraduate study is certainly a good option. So you don't necessarily have to enter the job market. There are other things you can do. And I'd like to finish on one final point that we noticed in the last recession in 2009. And this is that big firms experienced a shortfall. And by that, I mean that a big graduate recruiter sets out to hire, say, 30 graduates for their management training scheme, let's say. With a week to go, 5 people don't take those offers. Now, some companies don't have a backup. They don't have another list of graduates they can go to. They were set on hiring those 30 graduates, and 5 graduates won't be starting. What do? They use recruitment agencies. They need a very quick turnaround to get those 5 graduates or more to join all the others on a set starting date, usually, so that their management training can all start seamlessly. So I encourage you to go back to employers that you think have filled all their roles, find out if they have a shortfall. The chances are there will be some job offers that weren't accepted, and it creates an opening for graduates like through the back door. So definitely consider going back to these companies. You may not miss the boat. You may actually be able to find jobs with these, usually the bigger recruiters. So there's some positive steps I hope you can take moving forward. There is one other thing we've done to go the extra mile for graduates this year. This has been an idea we've had for a long time. And given the situation and the number of graduates who are starting to use our services, use our website, we thought we could go the extra mile. So we reached out to some of our contacts in the world of graduate recruitment. And we've actually been able to recruit 100 mentors. So these are people who are business leaders. They are ex-university career staff. They are some of your alumni. They are actually professional mentors or coaches, some of them. But they're all very inspiring people with several years of work experience. And they've all offered to give 1 hour's free mentoring over a video call. So visit graduatementor.uk. Look for a mentor based on an industry sector. Book in a time and a date. and someone will get back to you and arrange a video call for you. So you could brainstorm your career ideas, get your CV reviewed, help you prepare for an interview. It could be anything, but you'll get 1 hour with a mentor entirely free. So I encourage you to get on there. That's all part of our campaign called #help COVID generation. So use that hashtag on Google if you want to find more resources to help you get a job during a recession. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them.